A simple, golden fruit promised riches beyond imagination, but when greed clouded judgment, it revealed the true cost of chasing shortcuts. Can one man's mistake teach the value of patience, hard work, and humility? In the heart of a small village, nestled beneath the towering peaks of the mountains, lived a humble farmer named Arun. His life was simple, marked by the rhythm of the seasons and the hard labor required to tend to his fields. Every morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the hills, Arun would rise, stretch his tired limbs, and step outside to begin another day of work. His crops, though not the most bountiful, were enough to sustain his family. His wife, Leela, and their two children, Maya and Raghav, shared in the work, and together, they made their small home a place of warmth and love. Yet, despite his dedication, there was always a sense of longing in Arun's heart. He worked tirelessly, hoping that one day the land would yield more. It was not greed that drove him, but a deep desire to provide a better life for his family. He often found himself wondering what it would be like to live without the constant worry of not having enough. What would it be like to have an abundance of food, to be able to give his children the education they deserved, to never worry about the coming winter? One evening, as Arun sat by the fire, listening to the crackling wood, his thoughts wandered to the stories he had heard in his youth. Legends of a golden fruit that grew in the heart of the forest, a fruit so rare and precious that it was said to grant its possessor unimaginable wealth and prosperity. The fruit was said to be guarded by fierce creatures, hidden deep within the forest where few dared to go. But for those brave enough to find it, the rewards were said to be limitless. Arun had heard these stories many times throughout his life, but they had always seemed like mere tales, woven together to spark imagination, with no foundation in reality. After all, no one had ever truly seen the golden fruit. It was a fable, a myth to entertain children and provide a sense of wonder. But as the years passed, something inside Arun shifted. The life he led, though steady and fulfilling, no longer seemed enough. He had worked hard for so long, but his dreams of a better life felt distant, as though they were always just out of reach. One night, after a long day in the fields, Arun lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The thought of the golden fruit consumed him. He could not shake the image of it in his mind. The glowing golden skin, the promise of prosperity. What if it wasn't just a myth? What if the fruit was real, and it could change everything for him and his family? The more he thought about it, the more the idea took root in his heart. The next morning, Arun made up his mind. He would find the golden fruit. He could no longer ignore the possibility that it might be real, that it could be the answer to all his struggles. He had worked hard for years, yet his dreams had not been realized. This fruit, if it truly existed, could be the key to changing his life. He would set out for the forest at once, no matter the danger, no matter the cost. He could not allow his doubts to hold him back any longer. Arun packed a small bag with provisions, some bread, dried fruit, and a water flask, and set off towards the dense forest that lay beyond his fields. The journey would be difficult. The path to the heart of the forest was long and treacherous, and many who had attempted to find the golden fruit never returned. But Arun was resolute. He knew that the risks were great, but so were the potential rewards. He could not keep living in uncertainty, wondering if the golden fruit was out there waiting for him to claim it. The forest loomed ahead, its towering trees casting deep shadows over the ground. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the further Arun ventured, the more the sounds of the village faded into the distance. All that remained was the rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a distant bird. The deeper he went into the forest, the more the path seemed to disappear, replaced by wild overgrowth and winding trails that seemed to lead nowhere. But Arun pressed on, his determination fueling each step. Days passed as he journeyed deeper into the forest. His body ached from the long hours of walking, and his provisions began to run low. At night, he would camp by the side of a stream, staring at the stars, wondering if he had made a foolish decision. Was the fruit truly real, or had he been chasing a fantasy all along? There were moments when he thought about turning back, returning to the comfort of his family, the familiar fields, and the life he knew. But each time doubt crept in, his mind would return to his family, their dreams, their struggles, and the desire to give them a better life. He could not turn back now. The golden fruit was the key, and he was determined to find it. On the fourth day of his journey, after navigating through thick underbrush and crossing a fast-flowing river, Arun stumbled upon a clearing. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a soft golden glow on the ground below. At the center of the clearing stood a tree unlike any Arun had ever seen. Its trunk was thick and gnarled, with branches that stretched high into the sky. But what caught his eye was the fruit hanging from its branches. It was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The fruit was golden, shining with a radiant light that seemed to pulse with energy. It was beautiful, almost otherworldly, and as Arun stood there, he felt an overwhelming sense of awe. He approached the tree slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The golden fruit beckoned to him, and for a moment, Arun forgot everything. The journey, the dangers, the hardships. All that mattered was the fruit. As he reached out to pluck it from the tree, a low growl echoed through the clearing. Arun froze, his hand hovering just above the fruit. From the shadows, a massive creature emerged, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. It was the guardian of the fruit, as the legends had described. Arun's heart raced, and he instinctively took a step back. The creature spoke in a deep, rumbling voice, its words sending a chill down Arun's spine. You seek the golden fruit, but do you understand its power? Do you know the cost of what you desire? Arun's throat was dry, but he found his voice. I seek it for my family. I want to provide for them, to give them a life free from hardship. The creature's eyes narrowed as it stepped closer. The fruit will grant you what you seek, but it will also take something from you. It will change you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Are you willing to pay the price? Arun hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his heart. But as he looked at the golden fruit, shining with the promise of a better future, his resolve solidified. I am willing, he said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. The creature gave a low growl and stepped aside, allowing Arun to take the fruit. As his fingers wrapped around the golden fruit, a surge of energy coursed through him. It was as if the entire forest had come alive, and for a moment, Arun felt as though he could conquer the world. But as he held the fruit in his hands, the creature's voice echoed in his mind once more. Remember, nothing comes without a cost. Arun nodded, unsure of what lay ahead, but confident that this golden fruit would bring the prosperity he so desperately desired. He turned and made his way back through the forest, the weight of the fruit heavy in his hands, and the promise of a brighter future ahead. Arun returned to his village with the golden fruit in his hands, his heart racing with excitement and anticipation. He could hardly believe that he had found it, the legendary fruit that had been the subject of countless stories. The path back to his home seemed to be different now, as if the very air around him had shifted. The weight of the fruit in his bag felt heavier than ever, but it was not an unpleasant weight. It was the weight of hope, the weight of a promise he was about to fulfill. The village, which had always felt so familiar, now seemed to carry a sense of transformation in the air. As he approached his cottage, the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the land. Leela, his wife, was the first to see him from the window. She rushed outside, her face lighting up with a mixture of relief and curiosity. She had grown used to her husband leaving for days at a time, but this time, something about his demeanor was different. Arun, you're back, Leela exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. She stepped forward, holding her arms out to greet him. I've done it, Leela, Arun said, his voice tinged with excitement. I've found it. The golden fruit is real. Leela's eyes widened in disbelief. She had heard the stories just like everyone else. The mystical fruit that could change a person's life, granting them wealth and prosperity beyond their wildest dreams. She had never believed it was more than a myth, but seeing Arun standing before her with the fruit in his hands made her question everything. It's real, Leela asked, her voice trembling. You've really found it? Arun nodded, his heart swelling with pride. Yes, the fruit is real, and it's ours. We can finally live the life we've always dreamed of. Together, they entered their modest cottage, and Arun placed the golden fruit on the table. It shone with an otherworldly brilliance, casting a warm, golden light around the room. Leela could hardly believe her eyes. The fruit was as magnificent as the stories had described, golden and radiant, unlike anything she had ever seen. Arun could hardly contain his excitement. He had worked so hard to bring this fruit back, and now that it was within reach, he could barely wait to see the transformation it would bring. We will never have to worry about food again. We can live without fear of hunger or poverty. I'll sell the fruit, and we will have enough money to build a better life for our children, Arun said eagerly. Leela looked at her husband, seeing the intense longing in his eyes. She had always been proud of his hard work, but now, as he spoke of the fruit, she could sense a deep hunger inside him, a hunger not just for wealth, but for something more. She gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Arun, she said softly, this fruit may be extraordinary, but we must be careful. We don't know what its power truly is. We don't know what price it demands. Let's not be blinded by its promise. Arun turned to face her, his expression serious. I understand your concerns, Leela, but I've seen the truth. This fruit is our chance. We can finally live without the weight of hardship pressing down on us. We can make our dreams come true. We've struggled for so long, but now, with this fruit, everything will change. Leela hesitated, still uncertain. But seeing her husband's unwavering belief, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope deep within her heart. Perhaps this fruit was the answer they had been waiting for, the answer to their prayers. That night, as they sat down to eat, Arun took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly with excitement. He carefully cut the fruit, revealing its bright, golden flesh. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The fruit's aroma was sweet and intoxicating, filling the room with a sense of peace and calm. Leela's mouth watered as she watched Arun slice it into pieces. When the fruit was divided, they each took a small bite. The taste was indescribable, sweet, refreshing, and rich. As soon as the fruit touched their tongues, they felt a rush of warmth spread through their bodies. It was as though the very essence of the fruit was infusing them with energy and vitality. Arun felt as though his strength had been renewed, as though he could accomplish anything. Leela, too, felt a sense of peace she had not experienced in years. For the first time in a long while, they both felt truly satisfied. The weight of their daily struggles, the constant worry of not having enough, seemed to lift. They sat together, sharing the golden fruit, and for a moment, they allowed themselves to dream of a future free from hardship. But the days that followed were not as peaceful as they had hoped. At first, everything seemed perfect. The fields seemed to flourish in ways they had never seen before. The crops grew at an astonishing rate, and there was more than enough to feed the family. Arun and Leela marveled at the success of their land. It felt as though their hard work had finally paid off, that all their efforts had been rewarded in the most unexpected way. But then, something began to change. The land that had once been so bountiful started to show signs of decay. The crops that had thrived with the fruit's influence began to wither. The once lush fields that had been filled with vibrant colors now appeared dull and lifeless. The soil, once rich and full of nutrients, began to dry out. Arun watched in horror as the fruits of his labor seemed to slip away, and the golden fruit he had once believed to be the answer to all their problems now felt like a burden. Leela noticed the change as well. She could sense the growing unease in Arun's demeanor. His optimism, which had once been infectious, was now overshadowed by a deep concern. Arun, what's happening? She asked softly. Why are the crops failing? Why is the land not thriving like it did before? Arun could only stare at the fields in disbelief. I don't know, he admitted. I thought the fruit would bring us everything we needed, but now it seems like it's taking away something in return. The couple's newfound prosperity was beginning to unravel, and with it, the hope that had been so promising just days before. The more they relied on the fruit, the more it seemed to drain the life from the land. Arun had been so focused on the immediate rewards of the golden fruit that he hadn't considered the cost. The creature in the forest had warned him that everything came with a price, but he had dismissed it in his eagerness to find a solution to their struggles. As the days passed, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. The golden fruit had given them temporary pleasure and satisfaction, but it had taken more than they were willing to pay. The prosperity it had promised seemed to be fleeting, and the land, which had once been a source of sustenance and hope, was now in jeopardy. Arun felt a deep sense of regret, a realization that he had been too focused on the material world, on the promise of wealth and success, to understand that true prosperity could not be bought or gained through shortcuts. The golden fruit had shown him that what truly mattered was not instant gratification, but the hard work, patience, and respect for the land that had sustained them for so long. As he stood in the field, surrounded by the wilting crops, Arun understood the lesson he had failed to see before. The pursuit of wealth had blinded him to the deeper values that had always guided his life. He had sought a way to escape the struggles of daily life, but in doing so, he had overlooked the importance of balance, hard work, and respect for the natural world. The golden fruit had not been the answer. It had only revealed that the path to true fulfillment lay not in external riches, but in the internal strength to persevere, to nurture what was truly important, and to understand that no blessing comes without its price. And as Arun stood there, facing the consequences of his desire, he knew that the Rayal journey was not about finding a fruit or a treasure, but about learning to walk the path of life with wisdom, humility, and a deep appreciation for the things that truly mattered. As the days passed, Arun and Leela faced the consequences of their actions. The land had begun to show signs of wear, and with each passing day, the crops seemed to wilt further. The once vibrant fields, which had flourished under the influence of the golden fruit, now stood barren, stripped of their vitality. What had once promised prosperity and wealth had instead led them into a cycle of decay. The golden fruit, which had promised so much, had cost them dearly in ways they hadn't anticipated. Arun could hardly believe it. He had worked his entire life, toiling day in and day out, only to see the fruits of his labor wither in front of his eyes. What had once seemed like the answer to all their problems now felt like a curse. He had been so eager to grasp onto something that would lift his family from poverty, so focused on the idea of wealth and success that he had failed to see the deeper truth. The weight of his mistake was almost unbearable. Every time he walked past the fields, his heart sank. The golden fruit had promised so much, but it had taken away something far more valuable than wealth. Its power had drained the very life from the land itself. Arun had believed that the fruit would bring him all the prosperity he desired, but instead, it had stripped away the balance and harmony that had once existed in their lives. It had shown him that the pursuit of material wealth, without understanding the cost, was a hollow endeavor. Leela, too, had begun to notice the changes. She had always been the more grounded of the two, the one who reminded Arun to be cautious, to not get swept away by his desires. But now, as the land deteriorated around them, even she was unsure of what to do next. They had used the fruit, and yet the promise it had held had vanished. The fleeting sense of abundance had given way to a painful reality. One evening, as they sat in their small cottage, the silence between them grew heavy. Leela looked at Arun, her expression filled with both sadness and concern. "Arun, we need to understand what happened," she said quietly. "We have to accept the consequences of our actions." Arun nodded, his eyes filled with regret. He knew she was right, but he could hardly bring himself to face the truth. He had wanted so badly to change their lives, to bring an end to their struggles, that he had acted impulsively. He had been so focused on the golden fruit, so convinced that it held the key to everything they needed, that he had overlooked the importance of patience and wisdom. "I thought the fruit would save us," Arun said softly, his voice heavy with remorse. "But instead, it's taken away everything. I've destroyed the very thing that sustained us." Leela reached out and gently placed her hand on his. "You didn't destroy it, Arun. We made a mistake. We didn't understand what we were dealing with. But we can learn from this. We can rebuild, but we have to do it the right way this time. Her words, though filled with compassion, also held a sense of truth that pierced Arun's heart. She was right. They couldn't change what had happened, but they could choose how to move forward. The golden fruit had shown them the dangers of pursuing wealth and success without understanding the true cost. It had revealed that real prosperity was not something that could be gained through shortcuts or quick fixes. True wealth came from hard work, patience, and respect for the land and the simple pleasures of life. The next few weeks were difficult. Arun and Leela worked tirelessly to restore the land, trying to undo the damage that had been done. They no longer relied on the golden fruit or its promises. Instead, they turned to the earth with renewed reverence, tending to the soil with care and patience. Slowly but surely, the land began to heal. The crops started to show signs of life once more, though it would take time for them to fully recover. But for the first time in weeks, Arun felt a sense of hope returning to his heart. As he worked the fields alongside Leela, he found himself reflecting on what he had learned from his journey. The golden fruit had been a symbol of his desire for something more, something beyond the life he had known. He had believed that it held the key to his happiness, that it could provide the answers he so desperately sought. But now, he understood that true fulfillment could not be found in wealth or material gain. It came from the simple acts of living with integrity, working hard, and appreciating the gifts that life had already given them. One day, as Arun stood in the fields, he looked out over the land and saw the first signs of new growth. The crops were still small, but they were vibrant and full of promise. The earth had responded to their efforts, and with time, it would once again yield the bounty they had hoped for. Arun took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey. He had come to understand that the pursuit of success without wisdom was dangerous, but that the pursuit of meaning and purpose was what truly mattered. The golden fruit had given him a glimpse of what he thought he wanted, but it had also shown him what he needed to learn, that the greatest wealth in life comes not from external possessions, but from inner peace, hard work, and a deep connection to the world around us. Leela stood beside him, her eyes filled with quiet strength. "We've learned a lot, haven't we?" she said softly. Arun nodded, his heart full. "Yes, we have. The fruit may have given us temporary success, but it has also shown us the importance of patience, humility, and hard work. We don't need to chase after things that promise easy solutions. We just need to be true to ourselves and the life we've built together." Together, they walked back to their cottage, their hearts lighter than they had been in weeks. The journey they had undertaken, filled with both triumph and failure, had taught them invaluable lessons. They knew that life would never be without challenges, but now they understood that the true path to success was not about seeking shortcuts or easy answers. It was about embracing the journey with wisdom, knowing that each step, no matter how difficult, was part of a greater purpose. As the days turned into weeks, the land continued to heal, and the crops flourished once again. The golden fruit had faded into the past, a reminder of the lesson they had learned. Arun and Leela now understood that true prosperity was not about wealth or material gain, but about finding contentment in the simple joys of life, in the bonds they shared, and in the quiet moments spent working the land they had come to cherish. The golden fruit had shown them the dangers of pursuing empty promises, but it had also led them to the realization that the greatest treasures in life were not to be found in the fleeting moments of wealth, but in the lasting rewards of love, patience, and hard-earned success. And with this newfound understanding, Arun and Leela faced the future not with fear, but with hope, knowing that their journey was far from over.